See, when you hear the word supercar, you probably think of a Lamborghini, a Ferrari, a McLaren, or even an Aston Martin. But what if I told you there was a supercar from the 80s that you probably have never heard of? I'm talking about the Porsche 944 Turbo. You see, the 944 Turbo wasn't just a 944 underneath, but rather it was a 944 on steroids, beating the likes of not only Corvette and Ferrari, but also its bigger brother, the 911 Turbo. And all of that could be had for about $20,000, brand new. Now, before we can get into the testing of the 944 Turbo, we need to go over some history first. You see, the 944 was first introduced in 1982 as a 1983 model year in the United States. After a few years, Porsche decided to add some juice to the 944, and no, I'm not talking about this kind of juice. I'm talking about this kind of juice, as in horsepower. As in, they added a freaking turbo, adding a roughly 70 horsepower increase from the base model 944. So not only did the 944 Turbo have the extra power, but it also had the advantages of the base 944, like the 50-50 weight distribution. And although the 944 Turbo was weighing slightly heavier at about 2,800 pounds, it was still staying relatively light. And because of this, Porsche was no longer being mocked on the 944 for being slower than a Volvo. But now the 944 Turbo was running down Corvettes and Ferraris, but eventually its bigger brother, the 911 Turbo. So with Porsche deciding to go after Ferrari with the 944 Turbo, does that mean that this could be a supercar, or at least a supercar killer? So I've got a list of things that I think classify a supercar in the 80s, and we're gonna be testing the 944 to see if it actually could be a supercar or if it's just a potential supercar killer. During each category, I will not only be testing this 944 Turbo, but I will also be comparing it to the likes of a 1986 Ferrari 328 GTS and a 1986 Porsche 911 Turbo or 930, both of which are considered supercars of their time. So in order to be a supercar, you need to beat a supercar, or at least come pretty close to it. The categories I'll be testing are performance, design and engineering, price, and exclusivity. So the winner of each category will receive a point, but within those categories, there will also be chances to earn points. So at the end of the video, we can total up all the points and see if the 944 can be considered a supercar or if it can at least just come close to it. I really don't think this is gonna go well. Before I get too far into this video,
I'm seeing double here.
I would like to thank Ben for letting me use his 944 Turbo and for coming out here to help support me. Ben, really appreciate it.
My pleasure, man. Happy to share the love. Yeah, and get the 944 out on a beautiful day. And we got to smell it. The only thing you guys can't do is smell it.
If only there was 4D video, we could smell it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and test the 944, and he's gonna be helping me throughout the whole thing. So go check out his Instagram, whatever you want to leave, any social medias, I'll have it tagged up here so that way you guys can see it.
Sweet.
Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Let's
man.
get going. To test performance, I'll be measuring and comparing 5 total performance measures: horsepower/torque numbers, top speed, 0 to 60 acceleration, braking distance, and track lap times. For horsepower and torque, the 944 Turbo features a 217 horsepower and 243 pound-feet of torque out of a 4-cylinder turbo engine. The Ferrari, however, has 270 horsepower and 231 pound-feet of torque out of a 3.2-liter V8. So the 944 doesn't make as much power, but per cylinder, it does have the win here. And then the 911, on the other hand, features 282 horsepower and 289 pound-feet of torque out of a 3.3-liter turbocharged flat 6. So unfortunately, in terms of sheer power, I think the 944 Turbo is gonna have to take the seat on this one. So now moving on to top speed, and no, the 944 does not comfortably hold a top speed of 170 miles an hour. But the 944 does do a top speed of 160 miles an hour, and compared to the Ferrari, it's 166 miles an hour, and then the 911 Turbo at 160 miles an hour. So in terms of top speed, I think they all fairly hold their own, and truly, when are you ever gonna hit a top speed like that? So truly, for top speed, I think I'm just gonna give them all a point because it's too close to call. 0 to 60 acceleration is arguably one of the most important characteristics because it's the one thing that you're always gonna hit. Even though we didn't hit 60, it still is one of those things that you're always gonna have to use. The 944 Turbo does it in 5.9 seconds, and the Ferrari also does it in 5.9 seconds. The 911 Turbo, however, does it in about 5 seconds. 911 Turbo is miles ahead of both of these cars in terms of acceleration, but for the 944 Turbo to hold its own against a Ferrari, I think that's pretty good. Obviously can't give it a point here, but I think Porsche was right to target Ferrari in their advertisements, because it doesn't sound like they were wrong. I don't even know if you guys can see the acceleration. This thing pulls. Just like watch my face. Top speed and 0 to 60 acceleration are only part of the equation. Braking distance, however, now that's important. I was a little scared there for a second. From 60, the 944 Turbo just takes 180 feet to come to a complete stop. The 911, however, can do it in just 173 feet. And the Ferrari, well, it can do Ferrari things and do it in 156 feet. So with the Ferrari being more than twice the price of these cars, is it really a shocker that it beat both of them in this category? So for track times, I'm gonna be looking at the reported Nürburgring times for each car. Not all of these are gonna be super accurate, and I'm sure some people could do faster, but at least this will give us an idea of what the car is like. So for the 944 Turbo, it was able to complete a lap around the Nürburgring in about 8.5 minutes. The 911, however, did it in 8 minutes and 8 seconds. But the Ferrari, however, there was no reported track time. So I don't know if nobody's ever done the Ferrari on the Nürburgring, or if Ferrari's just keeping it a secret like they usually do. But for track times, the 911 Turbo is gonna have to go ahead and take this one. For overall performance, all of the cars come within a pretty respectable range of each other. Of course, the Ferrari and the 911 best the 944, but with the 944 being the cheapest of the bunch, as far as I'm concerned, 944. It's all right. So you probably made it through this whole video wondering where we got our data from. Of course, we're not able to test this data ourselves just because we don't have things like the Ferrari, the 911 Turbo, the track. We don't have the space to test the top speed and other things. So all of our data came from trusted sources online. And I'll put all the links in the description down below. So if you want to go check those out, feel free to do so. Moving on to design and engineering, this topic can get pretty subjective. So for design, what we're looking for is it to look like a supercar, but also be a head turner. And I think it's fair to say that the 944 certainly does not look like your typical economy car. Even though it doesn't look like your typical Ferrari and Lamborghini, I still think it is a head turner. Even while we were standing here filming this video, we did get a couple of nods and thumbs ups. But again, that could just be because we're the only ones here in this entire park filming with a camera, but still, we're gonna count it. Now, typically when we think of a supercar, we think a rear or a mid-engine car with a big engine and extremely lightweight. Now, the 944, however, does things just a little bit differently. It's a front-engine car with only a 4-cylinder turbo, but because Porsche really specialized in doing rear-engine stuff, this was a little bit new for them. Now, yes, they've done front-engine cars before this one, but this is arguably their best one. And even though the engine's in the front, this has a little trick up its sleeve, and I mentioned it earlier. And it's that the transmission actually sits in the rear of the vehicle, giving it that 50-50 weight distribution that I talked about earlier. And the design was so good that other car manufacturers like Mazda, Toyota, Mitsubishi, they all started copying this car. For example, look at this RX-7 that we found here. Oh wait, that's our 944 that we've been filming with this entire time. My bad. As for the 911's design and engineering, really it's just a beefier version of the previous generation. 911s have really just kept the same DNA throughout their entire history. Of course, they add more technology, different things here and there, but truly in the shell, it's still a 911. And as much bias as I have towards the 944, I really can't fault Porsche for not changing it. It's really hard to change something that's literally perfect. As for Ferrari, it does keep that supercar DNA with the big V8 engine in the middle of the vehicle. And of course, it still has that really luxurious Ferrari design and materials and everything else. Overall, because this category is so subjective, I think all cars deserve a point here. They're all beautifully designed, they all have their engineering in their own right, and it's really hard to just pick one winner. Now, I'm not gonna give the 944 a point for this, but I arguably think it has the best looking pop-ups. If you saw the Ferrari pop-ups, you'd probably laugh. On to price and exclusivity. Here we're just looking to see how expensive the cars were back in 1986 and how exclusive they were. Of course, things today are totally different, so we're gonna be adjusting for inflation. Back in 1986, the average home price was $111,000. A Big Mac only cost $1.60, and a gallon of gas was just 93 cents. But a supercar, that's not something that's supposed to be cheap. Back in 1986, when the 944 Turbo was just released, the MSRP was only $29,000, or about $83,000 when adjusted for inflation. Meaning if this car was made today at that same $83,000 price tag, it would cost less than a Boxster or Cayman brand new. The 911 Turbo, however, was about $40,000 or $116,000 when adjusted for inflation. At $116,000, you're definitely in that Cayman and Boxster territory, possibly the low-level 911s, but it's still gonna fall in that really weird category that's just not a supercar. Now, the Ferrari, however, that sold for $65,000 when brand new in 1986, meaning that adjusted for inflation, that would be about $190,000. If this car was made today, it would arguably rival the Lamborghini Huracan or other cars in that class. So I think it's fair to say that the Ferrari not only was a supercar back then, but even if it was made today and adjusted for inflation, it still would reach that supercar price tag. The 911 Turbo and the 944 Turbo, however, I don't think they're gonna reach that, even when adjusted for inflation. So the point is gonna have to go to the Ferrari here. Now, for exclusivity, we're looking for something with low production numbers, indicating that it's rare. Unfortunately, however, for the 944 Turbo and all other 944s, these were one of the most produced Porsche Porsches of all time. Specifically in 1986, 10,273 944 turbos were made. Not a whole lot, but when you look at the 911 Turbo, only 2,670 were made in 1986. And of course, Ferrari being Ferrari, they produced the least amount of cars in 1986 at 1,467 of the 328 GTS, unfortunately giving the point to the Ferrari here as well. But considering how many 944s have been parted out, this might be the more rare car today, but I can't give it a point for that because we'll never know. So of course the most exclusive is going to be the Ferrari, but I think when we compare this to the most common car sold in 1986, that was the Chevrolet Celebrity. There was over 400,000 sold in 1986. So when we compare that to those numbers, this is definitely a more exclusive car. So I'm gonna go ahead and give half a point to both the 911 and the 944 just because, well, because it's still not that common. To conclude, the 944 Turbo is surely one hell of a car. And through different variations of the 944, like the Turbo S, Porsche continued to rival the likes of Ferrari, Corvette, and even its bigger brother, the 911 Turbo. Porsche truly hit the perfect balance of a sports car, affordability, and engineering. So the 944 Turbo might not have the title of a supercar from the factory, but if you bolt on a bigger turbo, upgrade the cooling, give it some more air and other mods, this car could just be a supercar killer of the 80s. Or you could just break all the rules, slap an LS in this, and rip it all to hell with the Americans.
No, don't do that. Don't do that. Keep it stock.
But truly, the 944 Turbo is one of the most iconic cars ever built, and honestly, it really has that potential to be a supercar killer of the 80s. So I know this video was a little bit different from what you guys probably expected. Comparing a 944 Turbo to the likes of a supercar really kind of breaks the mold of what people traditionally think, but I really hope it was very entertaining for you all to watch. And again, thank you to Ben for letting me use his 944 Turbo. This thing is beautiful, and there's gonna be plenty more content with this on my TikTok and Instagram, so go check it out. But if you did enjoy this video, please make sure to leave a like down below and share it with your friends, and also click subscribe because there's gonna be plenty more content where this came from. But that's all I have for you guys here today. Drive safe, and I love you guys.